Hey, this is Taylor with Believe in the Run. I wanted to let you know that the podcasts are getting their own channel. As we continue to grow, please search and follow BITR Networks on YouTube and Instagram to find all of the podcast-related content. If you're looking for the shoe and gear reviews, you can find those on believeintherun.com or search Believe in the Run on YouTube and Instagram. Thank you for your support. Here's the show.
Give a good stretch, got my laces tied. My trusty podcast by my side. If you want to talk fun, it's the place to be. Yeah, it's the drop, D-R-O-P. Believe in the run.
Hey, it's Taylor with Believe in the Run.
And Matt with Believe in the Run.
And we are coming to you by way of Tempe, Arizona. Is that how you say it? Tempe?
Tempe. Yeah, I think tempeh is like a vegan protein.
Oh, which, is that soy?
I think so.
Okay.
Tempeh?
So what do we decide?
Tempe? I think Tempe.
Tempe. Okay, we're in Tempe, Arizona, which is not where we've been spending our weekend. We've actually been spending a lot of our time in the Grand freaking Canyon.
Correct.
And I had never been there.
Me neither. First time.
And grand is a good word for it. I've seen
Agreed.
other canyons, and this one puts those to shame for
Agreed.
sure. Yeah. So we were down here, still are down here, celebrating the launch of the BITR H1 right here, all done and dusted. And I actually like this this new colorway we created.
Yeah, I think we both agreed that we're not going to wash them.
Yep.
We're going to retain a little bit of the canyon dust with the shoe.
Yeah, because honestly, it's one of those, I'm not like too much of a commemorative kind of dude.
Yeah.
Like, the memories are usually pretty fine. But this is one of those experiences and trips that there's just so much that aligned, and we've talked about this a lot on our runs, like just one of those kind of miraculous, perhaps, fate, whatever you want to call it, like just everything aligned for a pretty magical experience in the canyon, and we'll chat about it.
Yeah.
But before we do, you've been around for a while. We've both been around Believe in the Run for a while, but this is your first time on the podcast. Obviously, people will know Coochie Maine or Matt Cucharski, our longtime trail reviewer. But welcome to the show, and can you tell us a little bit about your running background?
Yeah, sure. So thanks, Taylor. So I think we were trying to figure this out on the trail because it's taken us 7+ years, maybe 7 years.
At least
right?
7 years.
Yeah.
Like we've been, we're two of the longest running reviewers, I think, besides the founders themselves.
Yeah. So we've been at this. I've been at this for a while with you, maybe 7 years, and not only is it my first time on the podcast, but it's the first time that we got to meet in person and share some miles, which is kind of crazy when we think about it. But I think back to what you were just talking about, this was really an epic way for that to happen. So I think this was a really cool way for it to come together. But before we get into it, I have been doing reviews, mainly trail reviews for Believe in the Run for, I think it's been 7 years now. Running background, I kind of got in. I started by way of triathlon.
Oh, really?
And
I feel like I got your, like we basically shared our life stories in the canyon. Which just naturally happens. Yeah. But I guess I didn't even know that part of how you started.
So there was running involved, but it was not a lot. A lot of cycling and swimming, and after a while, I really realized that running was the one sort of sport that I was drawn to. It was just the most raw and natural, and that was about the same time where I think a lot of Believe in the Run's audience is familiar with the Faster Bastards. So I'm also from Baltimore, and probably a year or two before starting with Believe in the Run, I started running with the Faster Bastards maybe 8-9 years ago, and that sort of just gave me full send from the triathlon background into running, and just went all in on it. And and you guys hype up the Faster Bastards.
So when I was able to go to Baltimore,
Yeah.
I'm like, I got to go to the Classic, got to experience this. And it really is a really unique group in
Yeah.
terms of like a running group. Like there's a lot of running groups out there, but in terms of like, I know there's men and women go there, but like the brotherhood that it kind of initially started, you feel that when
Yeah,
you're there.
yeah.
And so is that kind of how like, I mean, you got connected with Faster Bastards and still are like almost a decade later.
For sure. I mean, running is blown up, right? In general, since COVID, you can just say, right?
Sure.
And
Yep.
with that, run clubs, run crews, same thing. Baltimore,
Mm-hmm.
you know, when I first started with the Faster Bastards, there's a couple different run clubs, but now it's great for running. It's great for the city. There's a ton of clubs, but
Yeah.
there's something special about the Bastards. For sure, a lot of people in that group are some of my best friends in the whole world, and you know, it makes running special. It makes spending time with those people special. So running, you know, now as far as like what I got into, kind of all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I love the trails, obviously. That's where I spend a lot of time, but I run on the roads a ton too because you know, out of necessity, that's what's easiest. And so there are road races, trail races, you know, I kind of like everything. Obviously, like longer stuff is what I'm geared towards. I think as I get older, you know, a 5K and a 10K, going all out sounds way more scary than a 50K or, you know, even a 100K, because we know we're going to stop and eat some food and have some snacks, and there's not as much nerve. So, you know, that's kind of what's got me here. And, you know, it's been a fun journey, and, you know, running has really become something that's a passion and just part of who I am.
Yeah. And I like, also just knowing you over the years, like I know you've had a background in soccer, learned about wrestling to triathlon. I mean, you've had a sweet truck, maybe multiple that I don't even know of. It seems like gear is something that you enjoy, obviously, and doing Believe in the Run. Has that always been the case of like, I remember like getting an East Bay magazine as a kid, and just like, all I could do was window shop. Like, that's it. But like, were you the kid also doing the same thing? And like,
gear. I mean, it's funny because you get drawn when people get into running, right? They usually say, well, all you need is a pair of shoes, right? And we know that's not true. I mean, technically, sure, but the age we live in now, people love gear, right? And I would say that that's true. I mean, whether it's going back to being a kid and getting the Sears Wish Book and going through and looking at all the stuff and marking it up, you know, or, you know, like you said, like getting East Bay catalogs when you're playing soccer. Obviously, triathlon is like gear junkie central, right? So bikes and, you know, all the different, you know, accessories. But running, you know, you think it's simplistic, and it can be as simple as you want it to be. But like, if you're not sort of geeking out on what the newest things are and what's out there, you're missing out. And you know, it's been fun to see how much stuff has really evolved in the last 5 to 10 years.
Especially like that last 5 to 10 years has just really taken off, and there's such a variety of what's out there. Like we talk often about how there's legitimately a good shoe for any experience that you want. And we get to experience that often, and very rarely these days something that is dissatisfying, but it's quite the world we live in. And we got to put a lot of that gear to the test this weekend.
We did.
And like we were saying, we were down in the objective this weekend was to come here and celebrate the launch of the BITR H1, which is, in a nutshell, the original Mount Coast H1 with an integrated sock liner. Founded by our founder, Thomas Newberger, and that's something that he's always really enjoyed about some of his favorite shoes, like the Hoka Tectonics 2.5. I mean, we didn't get that one. And then the Nike Lunar something Epic.
I think there's the Lunar Racer, and I think the Lunar Racer. Had the same sort of sock liner, but not as tall.
So effectively, this shoe is co-designed with Thomas. Again, Believe in the Run founder, and it's just kind of his baby. And it was based off of a versatile shoe design anyways, the H1, meant for more of that road to trail. And so it kind of brings it all together to have a lighter build and a better fit. And those are things that from the initial shoe he wanted to improve on, and felt really strongly that this could be a shoe that could handle a lot of different things. And the short end of the story of why we're here is really to try to accomplish something that he hadn't been able to before.
Yes.
And so his only DNF, the only time that he has felt that he has actually quit on an objective, is when him and his buddy 18 years ago attempted the rim to rim to rim challenge here in the Grand Canyon, and they bowed out halfway through. And so that was our big objective, to come here and get an ultra in. Not the original objective
right.
of the rim to rim to rim,
yep.
because the North Rim is closed, but we had a phenomenal crew. Like,
for sure.
I'm not even going to try to... Yeah, let's try to list everybody. We can do it.
We can name everybody. It's not that many.
Okay, so there was you and I.
Yep.
Obviously Thomas.
Yep.
We have the video wonder boy, Carl.
Yep.
And from the Mount Coast team, we had Lynn and Doug.
Yep.
Path Projects co-founder, Floris Gierman.
Yep.
We had David Hash, photographer.
Yep.
We had Spencer Imbach, local Faster Bastards runner.
Out running right now, trying to get the Burrito League, getting a cameo at the Burrito League Chipotle while we film.
Yeah. And
I think. Oh well, I think we're missing one special
major
appearance. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Mr. Ryan Hall.
You may have heard the name before.
Yeah.
Former American record holder in both the half and full marathon. Just not just a local legend.
Just a
global legend.
Yeah.
Who took us on a trip down into the canyon. And so we had quite the crew. And it's not often, like we've been on a lot of these trips, where you bring people from all these different corners of the industry into kind of, we had two houses, but one circle.
Yeah.
And in the running community, obviously we can jive, and I think the community itself is a really great ideal for humanity.
Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't always jive in this way that you feel like you have lifelong buddies after this, but this was one of those experiences that ended up being that way.
Yeah. I don't know if it's the place, the surroundings, right? There is something in the Grand Canyon. I mean, we could talk about it later as we recap, but Ryan really set the tone with a really special moment we kind of all had in the darkness, in the quiet, before we went out on this adventure. And, we had people that we've known for a while, people that we're meeting for the first time, and over the course of being out in a place as sort of majestic and magical and just awe-inspiring and excruciating and horrible all at the same time. When you spend 8, 9, 10 hours traversing a place like that from south to north and back, you learn about people's lives. You learn about who they are as people, their families, their running. It's more than running, and it's sometimes that's a tool to help get somebody through a tough time out there and talk to them and get their mind off it. And sometimes it's just bonding, and really spending that time to get to know someone. And I would say that the trip and the run itself sort of surpassed any expectations I sort of had for myself.
Yeah. And those are the kinds of moments where we're going to be able to draw back on this for inspiration, for a buddy to call, or just when I see some of the photos that Dave Hash has brought out from this
amazing
journey, it just brings you back to not just emotional attachment, but many of us kind of also had really spiritual experiences over the time that we were in the canyon. And it was just something special. We did a podcast episode not too long ago, or a couple. One was why you shouldn't do an ultra or a trail run, and maybe we should have told Carl about that one, before this, and then followed up by why you should. And while we could think of probably a lot more things of why you shouldn't in terms of a list, the qualitative reasons, the quality and the strength behind the reasons of why you should try these types of things, it just far outweighed any of the kind of the silly tongue-in-cheek reasons we gave for not doing it. And so as we talk about our experiences, I kind of wanted to lead with that of like, we've done ultras, we've been on the trails, thousands of miles over the years. And to come to a place like this with a group of guys like this, it was just something special. And like, we'll just kind of say that from the top.
For sure.
So let's just get into it from the weekend. Like we literally all flew in on Thursday.
Yep.
And some of us were meeting for the first time, got in a car, and we headed up the road a few hours toward the Grand Canyon.
A lot of planes, trains, automobiles and no trains. Yeah. So
we did hit a train.
We did.
Yeah.
So planes, trains, automobiles. Okay. Probably, we probably spent most of our time on this trip either on foot in the Grand Canyon or on some sort of transportation vehicle with maybe some beers in between.
Yeah, in between. And the third most would be sitting around a fire. We had a fire every single night.
Let's not overlook that.
Yeah, for sure. So we just came in that first day, kind of got settled, and then the next day we just wanted to get our bearings and get our eyes on the canyon.
Yep.
Even though we weren't going down in yet. But describe kind of coming out of the car at the Grand Canyon and seeing it for the first time.
Yeah.
What were your thoughts initially?
Well, so, I mean, this is a theme for me all weekend, right? Is that sometimes life is busy, and I think also sometimes we lose a little bit of track of the importance of things, and we say no to things a lot. Mm-hmm. And this trip was something that I almost said no to because of a lot of reasons like that. Because you have a life, you have kids, you've got work, you got stuff going on, and I say all that because when I got out of the car and I looked down into the canyon for the first time, it was just sort of instant, like, stop saying no to things.
Yeah.
Because you can see something on TV and a movie and pictures, the photos that we're going to bring back are going to be amazing memories. But when you witness something like that, it's mm-hmm. just so special. And so looking down, I think two things came over me immediately. One was just sort of happiness and validation that I was here and that I said yes to something, and I was here with people that, I was going to get to share this with.
Which, you're saying this, and it's kind of like hitting me new, even though we've talked about this, of like just the act of saying yes to something. And I'm not like advocating for like being a yes man or anything like that.
No.
But like doing something out of the ordinary in itself, just like saying yes, that initial like, let's go, promotes growth and just opportunity like no other, right?
Yeah.
Because you're saying yes or no, you're just kind of automatically saying yes or no to something else.
Yeah.
But kind of being intentional about that.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah. So that's so there's two parts, and that was the deep one.
Yep. Okay.
The second one was, oh my God, we have to go down that.
Yeah.
And I wasn't as concerned about the going down and across. I was more thinking already about, we're going to have to come back up that thing.
Yeah.
And I've done, like you said, we both have raced, every distance. We've run distance races that are double, what we were going to cover. So it was weird for me to have this moment of like, oh my God, because mm-hmm. In my head getting here, I was like, this is not a race. This is not a distance that scares me. Mm-hmm. This is not terrain that really scares me. But so I almost had this like very nonchalant vibe all leading up to it, right? Even the night before, I'm the guy pushing like the bigger beer, right?
Yeah.
It's like, hey, whatever, right? We're out here to have fun. And but I think there was something about it when you saw it in person, and there's just this mystique of the Grand Canyon that made it really real. where in a good way, there was all of a sudden a sense of like a little bit of anxiety that you need like to take it serious, right? And we'll get into that later as to why it's important that we took it serious, but
to say
that was sort of where my head went.
Well, I kind of had that same experience too of like, and for me, you know, I grew up rural. I live rural now, of like, I kind of had a similar experience in the fact that like, right outside my window at home is a 14,000 foot peak. And it's actually like equal distance going up as the canyon is going down. So that like, that reversal of it, one, makes me see my own peak at home a little differently. Holy cow. I've been up at, you know, however many times, but it's just different seeing it like dug into the ground. Like it's just a completely different view, and it's kind of makes you think of it logistically in a whole new way. And like, just like the fact that you're running down first and then you're coming back out. You're going lower in elevation and then higher, and just like all these different mental problems. So from like a trail runner's perspective, it just kind of flipped like, oh, this is a unique problem to solve and to like go explore, obviously, like my favorite thing to do. And then, it just like, I had the, again, just like repeating what you said, basically, of like, wow, this is real?
Yeah, this is real.
And I remember like going to New York City for the first time and seeing all these things that you see in like Home Alone 2 or all these videos, and it's like, wow, this is a real place and it's actually as grand as I imagined it. The Grand Canyon is actually as grand as I imagined it in like all the best ways and worst ways, but we'll get to those too. And so that first day we get there, we do a short shakeout run, and there was a little bit of trepidation for you sea level folk. I was fine. I'm actually lower than what I live at.
There was a sense of panic, maybe, unsettledness amongst the group, with the majority coming from, you know, the East Coast or, you know, and I think, I know personally, I was so focused on things like how hot was it going to get, how, you know, what kind of vert are we looking at, you know, what's the terrain, that I almost really just didn't even think about altitude adjustment. But I very quickly remembered as we got about a half a mile into our shakeout run, and I was like, oh, this is real.
Yeah, pretty high. Pretty high.
Because we were at what?
7,500
feet,
like and that's really high up in the sky. And so those, it also reminded me of just like the logistics in a place like this. And Reese, our other reviewer, she loves the Grand Canyon, comes multiple times a year if she can, and she just kept saying like, do not understate or undermine what you're about to do and where you're about to go. And that was also another quick reminder of like, we need kind of logistics to be pretty down pat. And I'm a fairly relaxed person and I'm okay flying by the seat of my pants, but I know that's not everybody. But it was a good reminder too of like, before we go in, we should get some of these things ironed out. So that's an encouragement to anybody who hasn't been in the canyon. And now that we've lost our canyon virginity here. Yes, that's something.
We've got some lessons learned to share.
For sure. And so that night we ended up going back, got a sweet buffet breakfast, and just kind of prepared for the day to come. Anything else that we did that day? No,
I mean, we did the shakeout. I think it was important to get everybody, one, just prepared logistically for like where we were going to park the next morning, how this was going to work, where we were going, what time we need to get up. But then, you know, you and I and Spence ended up extending the run a little bit so that we could even scout out the trailhead to South Kebab, so we knew exactly where we'd go. But after that, I think everybody was just ready to like get some food, get back to the house, do the thing where everybody's getting the gear out and taking inventory of like, all right, what do I have for tomorrow? What do we need? I think the household all went into that mode when we got home, so we could really get everything prepared.
Yeah, and just for those who might be traveling to the Grand Canyon, the trail that we ran on before, you don't always have to go into the Grand Canyon. There's a lot of little finger trails like at the rim. So we ran a pretty flat on all paved, basically,
Yeah, it was basically like a rec path.
Yeah, just right along the rim, so you can see the canyon, but don't have to necessarily go into it. And I thought that was a good way just to get our bodies mentally and physically ready. But yeah, we did all our gear checks, got to bed because my alarm was set for 3 o'clock. We were going to head out at 3:40, but I couldn't sleep all the way until my alarm. So I just, feeling a little apprehensive and ready to get out there for sure.
Yeah.
So we woke up next morning at, like 2:40, I think I got up, started getting my stuff on, doing our last gear checks, making sure everybody had everything. And then we had about a 30-minute drive to the canyon itself, where we met up with our fantastic trail guide. With our host. And so Ryan Hall, obviously one of the greatest American runners ever, he lives down in Flagstaff. He frequents the canyon, and in some ways, like I had never met Ryan. We've talked about this too, of like, I kind of like the Grand Canyon, I guess, of like, I hoped he was going to be exactly as I'd imagine.
Right.
Like kind of as he displays, more of like a gung-ho kind of guy, but also seemed really humble and more hippie-ish than I, for like not trying to degrade him at all. Like it just so relaxed. And how would you explain Ryan?
Yeah, I mean, you and I had this discussion in the canyon at one point where we talked about the beauty of running as a sport and how it's different than really any other sport, where it's not unique to Ryan, but Ryan exemplified everything that is great about that connection, because running is really the only sport that I've ever been a part of where you can toe the line with heroes and legends, and not just be in the same race as them and bump into them, but like go talk to them after the race, you know, or like meet them. And I've had nothing but good experiences with pros and elites that have just been so down to earth. And to your point, I only knew, Ryan, as through all his records and following his career. Didn't know how he would be in person, but I just sort of had this thought based off of what I knew about him and what I'd follow through, like we all do through social media, that he seemed like this just really humble, down to earth family man. And it basically, my expectations were not just met, but like he was a special human.
Yes.
And it sounds like cheesy, but like I feel like we came out of there making friends with Ryan in a genuine way, and spending an entire day together just like we did, running and learning more about each other, but learning about him and him learning about us, and genuinely like just sharing the miles and the stories. And it's surreal. I mean, this is like literally 5 minutes before we started the podcast, Robbie commented on, I had posted a video of me and Ryan running yesterday, and he was just like, that's insane. And I think my response was something along the lines of like, I still don't believe that video is real. Like that's a memory that exists, because it's still so surreal to me.
Yeah. And they say don't meet your heroes, but if Ryan Hall is your hero, I hope you get to meet him, because
definitely,
like you said too, of like you started telling the story of like how we started our day. We parked our car, we met up with him, shook his hand, kind of told us how the day was going to go, and because he really was our guide. Like, people pay big money to get a guide like this. But he was willing to, just because he really loves to show people his home. And like, I live in an area where we have a national park, and whenever people come, I just love showing people the area and my home trails, because I know how much joy I get from them, and I want other people to have that. And he was like, that's exactly how he was too. He was so ready to share with us. And so,
like, authentic. Just like the best.
Totally.
Like, everything about the interactions were authentic.
And he's not like just checking things off a list or getting us from point A to point B and then skipping out of there. Like, he was there for the adventure with us, and just like it made it a really special time. And like you said, again, when we started, we kind of started down that North Rim Trail, or the the rim trail and to the South Kaibab trailhead, and he had us all stop and pull over to the side to an overlook where we couldn't see a dang thing because it was like 4:45 in the morning.
Yep.
And he wanted us to actually look out and in his own way kind of, we're saying like, look out and look in at the same time. And we couldn't say a thing, and he just asked us to take a moment to reflect and be here today. And that, I think, for all of us in a different way, set the tone in a way that really set up the rest of the day really, really well.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, and so then we started down into the canyon, just first mile in silence.
Yeah,
peering out
first
for
mile in
cats.
silence with one request only from Ryan, which was look for mountain lions.
Yeah,
Scan for their eyes, because he said if we saw one, it would be a really special day.
yeah. Which knowing him now, I'm like, he knows we're not going to see any lions. He just wanted us to be looking out and aware.
Right.
Aware, because I think not only just like physically aware, but mentally, emotionally, spiritually aware of what we were getting into. And in that first mile, we had our first casualty, which was, the resident trail runner here. I took a wipeout. It's been years since I've taken a wipeout, and definitely did a little roll and tumble. And Thomas rolled an ankle or two. Some people,
pieces of cactus that are still in his hand, I think.
Exactly. And so, like, judging off that first mile that we were getting ready, it was like, oof.
This could be a long day.
A long day. Yeah. Could you talk about the descent a little bit?
Yeah.
Because there's kind of like a few different sections if we kind of partitioned off the day of like, I kind of think of it as the descent, Phantom Ranch, Ribbon Falls, back to Phantom Ranch again, and then the ascent.
We might have another word for that ascent, but yes, we'll leave it at that for now.
Yeah.
We can get into some more adjectives later about what we want to call that last one. But
gosh.
Yeah, I thought of it the same way. And so to your point, like if people are listening to this that are not just wanting to hear the recap of our story, but are planning to come out and do this, I think it is important to kind of break it down that way as well, because they're just different. You're almost like you're in a different world in each one of those stages. And so the descent was honestly one of my favorite parts. I think it won because we were fresh. So I was in a really great mindset and my legs were feeling great. And so this descent, the trade-off we really had to make, right, was, and I think a lot of people that are going to go as far as we did, the trade-off is we had to start really early to avoid the heat. And it did get hot. And so the trade-off is that we're going to miss a little bit of the visuals early on. And we're going down in a really, really pitch black, time of day with our headlamps really the only thing to guide us. And it was pretty tricky. It was trickier than I thought. Most trails, I really love the descent. It's fun to get flowy, to open it up, take advantage of that. This one was a little bit trickier, especially I think for a lot of us from the East Coast, because of the mules, right, and the way the trail is built, it's almost like staggered wooden steps, right, built into these switchbacks, where it's really hard to get a constant cadence. You'd get into a flow for a little bit, and then you'd catch yourself in like a double step or like a big step, and so you really had to focus on where you're going.
You had to be more engaged, like mentally and physically, than even I thought. Like I'm, somewhat used to these kind of trails because in the American West, this is just kind of how they're built. But it's in the dark, all these big steps, different rhythms. And the thing that I didn't really bring into account, like in my mind, I'm like, okay, it's going to take us 90 minutes. We're going to be partly in the dark. It'll lighten up. So one headlamp was fine because we were just using it for maybe an hour, would you say?
Yeah,
of which we needed it?
Yeah, because really the dawn, like the pre-dawn light, especially being in the canyon, when it opened up, was enough light, and that was great when that started because the headlamps were even challenging. Like
Yeah.
we talked about, when you've got you've got a group of 10 guys really hauling down the mountain, you're kicking up all the dust off of the top layer, and it's so dry. And so it's blowing and it's creating, you're almost like running into a dust particle stream, and your headlamp is creating shadows. And so once we got maybe through that first hour or so, it was great to just kind of flick it off, adjust the eyes to like that pre-dawn light. That's just enough to give you the natural light to be more confident. And also that's when, I think that's really when the experience started, because that's when you could see what was around you, what you were running into.
And like, if you look at pictures too, like it doesn't really give the trail itself justice in terms of how technical, at least on the South Kaibab Trail, how technical it was, or just kind of rougher than it seems, because in your mind, like even I, an experienced trail runner, thought it would take this amount of time, and we were about almost an hour more. Granted, we were waiting for our group kind of get splitting up throughout the way, and I think that would be a good tip too. Like if you are taking a bigger group into the canyon, be okay with like kind of splitting up into smaller subgroups and rolling, because you don't want to waste time, really, and you don't want to waste calories and water and
we learned that firsthand. I think it's a really good tip. Is like, I know for me, never running there before, I pictured this Grand Canyon, and it is just so vast. However, it, from a trail perspective and orientation, was so much simpler than even like my local trails, like single track, right? Because it's so open. It's really hard to kind of get lost. And because of that, right, if you have a big group, I think it was way more advantageous when we made that decision to split up, because like you said, one, all that waiting around is you need more calories, it's getting hotter, you're wasting time. But like we talked about it too, and it's like you don't want to put pressure on either group to go outside of what their comfort zone is. It's a long day out there. You don't want people going faster than they want to that early, and you don't want people sitting around too long and locking up. And so if people are worried about splitting up, thinking that you're going to get lost or you're not going to find each other, I don't think that's a big problem out there.
And we had a couple rendezvous points sometimes at like where trails intersect, or down at the bottom Phantom Ranch, but that was almost 9 miles in. Right. And even with their stops, it did take a little bit longer as everybody was getting oriented to the canyon itself. But even when we got down, even though we had 2 groups at that time, it really didn't take too long for people to roll in and kind of regroup. And then we took off towards our next objective. And I want to talk about the sunrise, because it's always one of my favorite parts of trail running. And like, now that I'm not running as much in the mornings, I really miss that. But kind of with the whole area, as the sun comes up, you get all these colors in the sky, you get to see all the different layers of the canyon, and it was just like one of those, kind of milestones in the experience. So if you're ever going down there yourself, like, just take a moment or two just to either walk or stand and soak that in, because that's one of the greatest parts of this experience for me personally. For sure. It was a lesson throughout the day. It started with the sunrise, and I think the beauty of it not being a race was that when you're in a race, you have this mentality of blowing past the things around you, and you don't always take them in because you're focused on a time and a goal. And the beauty in yesterday was that I didn't stop my watch. I wasn't looking at time. I was letting it roll, and we were taking it in. And when it felt like, when somebody saw something that Ryan saw something he wanted to share with us, we would stop, we would look at it, we would take it in, and it would have been a big mistake to be out there and just saying, oh, I want to do this time. I said it's going to take me 90 minutes to make this descent. I want to make sure I do that, and miss out on everything that's around you. And we built in a buffer. It went beyond that buffer. So I would say whatever buffer you kind of think, maybe add 10% to that.
I would say be conservative with that.
Very conservative, because we thought we were being conservative too, and just needed extra. And that just the reality of the canyon, apparently. And so then as we come down to the Colorado River, and I've kind of had this experience of like, I live in the headwaters of the Colorado River, was able to see it a few weeks ago in Moab, and then getting down to it, even though it's going through a similar canyon as it is in Moab, when you're at the bottom of the Grand Canyon and you see that green water, like just seeing it brought a sense of new life almost of like, you just came down, you know, I think it was right around 9 miles by the time we got to Phantom Ranch, right?
It was around 9, and to your point, it's like the transition and the stages. Like you feel like you just left one world and you're entering the next one. And before we even saw, we heard it, right? Like, and back to Ryan's like comments at the beginning of like listening and seeing and like taking it all in. It's like as soon as we heard that rushing water sound, even though we couldn't see it yet, I think we all got like a little giddy because like it was something new, and it was also like a benchmark to be like, we just checked off that box, right, of like stage 1, and like we got that under our belt.
And then from there we progressed from the Colorado River up toward the North Kaibab Trail through Phantom Ranch, which we'll talk about that kind of on the return trip. Not much to talk about early in the morning. They get opened at 8:30 a.m. and we were there probably 7.
Yeah, we were there pretty early. There was maybe some
7.
campers hanging out, but no activity. Yeah, we knew we'd be coming back through. The only activity we had that, you know, at that point is, you know, there was water. So there was a lot of water shut off in the park this time of year. So
and all of that stuff you can check on nps.gov.
Definitely check it
on there
because it could be easier than what we had it. We knew what we were getting into, but that was important because we knew we had water there. So we kind of let people regroup, fill up. We had gotten pretty lucky because obviously we started so early, so the heat wasn't really a factor yet. It was actually really nice. You know, and from there we knew we'd be doubling back. So we were going to have maybe about 6.5, 7 out and like be back. And so we can talk about it later as a fun anecdote, but I hate vests, the packs, right? So you know where I'm going with this. And so Ryan, you know, had been like talking to me and he convinced me, he's like, yeah, just you can stash it here. He's like, you're going to be fine. I've got a filter, you know, stash your pants with gels. You can ditch your shirt and your pack somewhere. We'll stash it here and you can get it on the way back. And so I was like, this is great. I felt like a new man. I was free. And
you were okay doing this. We knew we weren't going to have a super hot day. The next section was fairly mild. We had like 6 miles out to where we were going to go to Ribbon Falls.
Right.
And it was about 1,000 feet of gain.
Yeah, so that, pretty tame compared to the rest of the day. It was really tame.
We ran every step of that. So I felt like it was a very okay choice to do that. I almost did the exact same just to get the load off the body. And one more point about coming down, like if you're actually running most of the steps down to the river or to Phantom Ranch, my opinion would be like you could probably get away with just having 1 or 2 bottles. You don't have to load up yourself completely on water because you know you can fill up at the bottom. Before you go up, fill up. But I think you can get away with having a little bit less. So you're a little, you know, saving some of your
energy.
It's
weight, it's time. Bulk, you know, but but you know, that was a great decision. I was really happy with it. I mean, you have to have the right gear to make it work. I don't know if we want to start talking about any gear, but I think it's relevant to. I think the reason why I was confident to do that was, so we mentioned our friend Floris from Path Projects was on the trip with us. He also was so kind to outfit the whole crew, and I mean, he hooked us up, and we looked way more professional than maybe we had any business.
And many people noted that.
That was a theme all week. But one of the pieces here are these Path Projects half tights. And these are immediately my new favorite half tights. I wore these things out of the package. I never even tried them on before. Maybe don't do that.
Well, there was a lot of things that I tried first time on this, and I'm like, maybe I should have done that. Thankfully, it worked out. But these half tights totally did.
I mean, and so I bring it up now because well, one, the fit was amazing, no chafing,
Nope.
no problems. We'll talk about
And
the fact that they got wet, very wet, multiple
Many
times and dried, and
Yep.
that could cause some problems with
Yep.
some other brands. And but the main thing was the storage was just. I was able to shed a pack that had 4 bottles, all my gels, phone, everything, and basically carry one handheld flask. And I had my phone, I had gels, I had other fuel, I had everything in my pants.
Yep.
And
being the gear reviewer that I am, I wasn't just checking out your butt, but I was looking at how was it bouncing, how was it riding on your waistline, all of that, and you seemed like you were running really comfortable, even with just that and all the gear that you were bringing along.
I mean, it's like with all gear, the best thing you can say about a piece of gear is you forget you have it on.
Yep.
I didn't think about them.
Yeah,
so,
and you're going to be using these for an upcoming marathon.
Yeah, I love them so much. I was talking to Floris, and I've got a road marathon in a couple weeks, and I'm going to wear these. I will be able to put everything I need right there. So
easy
I'm
choice.
pretty stoked with these.
Yeah, on a Grand Canyon test.
Yep.
I do want to say a little bit, like, I'm someone who typically does have some chafing, my bigger legs, bigger butt, and I only had one slight, like, in the groin. I relubed and it was fine. Just from one seam, but I typically get that. And the other thing, there was just a little bit of pilling. I know that's something that people will ask about the durability, but even though it pilled a little bit, like, there's no signs of wear and tear that this is going to be a non-durable piece of clothing.
Yep.
Comfortable, practical, like, easily a go-to, like, with some of my favorites for sure.
Yeah, definitely.
Yep. And so we went out toward Ribbon Falls, and if you are going out to the Grand Canyon, the Ribbon Falls turn is very obvious. However, beyond that, it's not an obvious trail. You got to have a little bit of trail sense and be a little bold, I guess.
I mean, that is the one stretch where I would think it'd be really easy for someone coming out to a national park to say, I don't think I'm supposed to go in there. Right, because it looks more like some of the trails we probably have back at home.
It looks like a social trail is what we call it out west.
Yep. And so, it's not bad. It's a little bushwhacking. It's a little overgrown. I think the main challenges are for people, you've got, we probably had to cross the river maybe at least 2 times.
I think the least you could do it is in 2 times.
Yeah.
Once across the main stream initially, and then at least one other time as you're crossing as you get higher.
But it wasn't it wasn't too deep. It wasn't too rough, and we kind of knew that with the heat of the day and the fact we were going to the falls, that we were going to get wet. Yep. So it makes it an easy decision instead of trying to rock hop and maybe slip to just get in there and cross. And I'm really glad that we did, because we'll talk about Ribbon Falls and where we ended up at. But it turned out to be probably the highlight of the day.
I think
for me.
most people would say like that was their highlight. And this would be, like we talked about, the group dynamic. We did have someone wait up, like I just waited up for the rest of the group to come because it wasn't so clear. And I think that was paramount, just to get everybody a good time to get everybody on a similar track again. So we all were at the Ribbon Falls at the same time, and like a little oasis is exactly like whatever you picture an oasis as. That's what it was actually.
Yeah. It was. I didn't know what I thought it was going to be, but it wasn't that.
Well, and a lady at the top when we started asked me where we were going, and I said we're gonna go down and head it over to Ribbon Falls, and she said, "Oh, it's just a trickle right now." It's just a trickle right now, and so just like, okay, whatever, we'll go see it anyways. And even though if this was just a trickle, like it was a pretty fantastic trickle. So I'm glad you guys didn't listen to her. And to your point, we were worried because of everything we described about the trail, and also the fact that we hadn't, as far as our plan, the plan was a little unsolidified as far as like the turnaround, right, at Ribbon Falls. We knew we couldn't go up the entire North Rim because of the closure. So when we got to that closed gate, there was going to be probably some decisions around how people were feeling and like what we were going to do. And so
I know. So Ryan led. I think it was
Ryan Hall.
Let's
Ryan
we're on a
Hall.
first name basis now,
Yeah.
right? So Ryan Hall, and he had actually never been there either.
Yeah, so it was an adventure.
This was really cool because we got to see his excitement, like experiencing it for the first time. So when Ryan
like a child.
I mean, we all were. So when Ryan took, I believe it was myself and Flores and Spencer with him up, we were like, I mean, it was like euphoria. It was like a bunch of kids, just we got out on this, I guess we'd describe it, it's like this moss covered platform rock out in the middle where you just had this huge downfall from the waterfall. It was almost like you were surrounded.
And like, where's it coming from? I have no idea.
No.
Apparently, there's a
but it was ice cold.
So cold.
And the backdrop behind it, and I don't know if any of the listeners if they go out, you'll see some videos and photos that really, you can get a visual. But we were so happy when we looked down and we saw that you went back to make sure everyone made it up, because we were like, if they miss out on this, well, it's gonna be a total bummer. And so to your point, like getting the whole crew up there and getting to watch everybody sort of experience it, because it was this just like magical place, but it was also, I think, at a point where we're probably about 13, 14 miles into,
we had like 14 on
a day where that's not an easy thing.
And that's only halfway.
And you knew mentally you're only halfway. So I think it served a dual purpose of a really cool experience, but also a very much needed reset mentally and physically to everyone's bodies. They got out there, you got this ice cold water all over you that just sort of like, for me, it's like, it just like took away all the aches and pains and it like
revitalizing, say the least.
There was like a mindset shift.
Yeah.
For anyone who may have been having a tough time those last few miles, I feel like everybody left there in really good spirits.
Yeah. And so it was not only like just, it took your ability to reset in your mind, your body, like Thomas described it as a baptism. And so I'm like, gosh, that's just so true on many levels. And it was good to like get our clothes wet there, like took everything off to get under the water initially, but kind of got my shirt wet on the way out. You didn't have a shirt, but like got it wet to go out, especially if it was a warm day. We ended up having a pretty cool cloud cover day at that point. So it was just able to reset and just like kind of regulate the temperature, the heart rate again, and kind of set off back toward our next objective, which was back to Phantom Ranch.
Yeah, with one little pit stop for you and I.
A pit stop to say the least. Well, it was fun to see Ryan, like, again, we could tell how much joy he was getting out of sharing all this with us.
Yeah.
But then once he experienced something new, like became a kid again, and then you could just see in his mind, he's like, okay, I know there's another waterfall up here. Like on a map, you can see it above Ribbon Falls. There's a second Ribbon Falls. And he's like, how do we get there?
Yeah.
And so he claims he told us, but on the way out at some point, we had lost our guide. Sent part of the crew back to Phantom Ranch. You, Spence, and I kind of waited around for quite a while. We thought we saw him bopping up this trail, which in fact we did. We didn't know for sure, but we waited for what?
I mean, it was 20 to 30 minutes.
Yeah.
I mean, it was 20 minutes plus, which feels like an hour when you're just standing on the trail, right?
Yeah.
And but because it was after the fact, right? It was fine, and Ryan knew what he was doing. And, and I think
we had no reason to worry about him.
Yeah, like we weren't worried, but I think both of us just had that same mindset of like, you don't want to assume something and leave someone behind.
Yeah,
he had been so courteous all day to take us there that, despite the fact that he's Ryan Hall, he is also a human, and like anybody could have rolled an ankle or like slipped in on a rock or something. And so I think both of us were sort of like, all right, like there could be like, let's at least try to wait this out a little bit. And we had the comfort of knowing that if we wait and he's not back yet, I'm pretty sure that he's going to run us down.
He's got the leg speed.
So he's going to catch us.
Yeah. And it turned out that, he got into an explore mode, which I'm guilty of all the time. and ended up finding what he was looking for
Yeah.
and had a baptism of his own in that. It's funny to hear him explain. I don't even want to try to explain his experience, but
he was giddy, and so it worked out.
Yes.
He got to see something new that he wanted to see, and we
if you're
knew
back
that he
that
was
far
alive
anyways.
still. So we were all, once we all reunited, everyone was happy.
Yep. Yeah. So we jogged our way back to Phantom Ranch, where we waited longer for him, hoping he would show up. We got our famous Phantom Ranch lemonade.
Yes.
Did it live up to the hype?
Oh my God!
Yeah.
I mean, I think at that time of the day, you know, the bar is low.
Yeah.
Right. But
Sure.
hey, that lemonade was good enough that I went back for a refill.
Which is only $1.
$1 refills.
Pay up front, and
Yep.
yes, you can use Apple Pay.
Yes.
Tap to pay. We'll take credit card. I don't even know if they do cash, but
I don't know, but it's a good point, because when we got there, I realized who has cash on them anymore, and if I can't get one of these lemonades, I'm going to be heartbroken.
I would turn into a toddler and have a little bit of a fit.
Correct.
But yeah, it was worth it, and I don't want to spoil it. It wasn't quite country time. Like if it was just country time powder and you mix it into a pitcher, like that would have been like peak for me.
Yeah.
But it absolutely filled the hole in my heart that I needed for lemonade.
I mean, it was ice cold. It was sugar.
Yeah.
And I think all of us were, you know, just so happy to be back at the ranch and experience that for the first time. Be reunited with everybody, because like you said, we had split up, and so even when we got back to the falls together, you know, like you said, we had sent the rest of the group off so they could get back while we waited for Ryan. So again, you know, it wasn't like it was only like a mile or two. Like we had about 6-7 miles to cover to get back to the ranch, and
you and I were 6-7 miles of the whole day.
Yeah, my kids were on here; they'd be doing 6-7.
Yeah. Oh, thank you.
But I think that was a really fun stretch for me because it was just really the two of us. Spence was with us for a bit, but that was really the first time I think like you and me got to just have some one-on-one miles, and like we were picking it up and opening it up a little bit because we were like trying to figure out, one, like, hey, let's make up time and catch up to those guys. 2, let's keep running and not get run down by Ryan Hall. So I think we covered that stretch. That was probably one of like the faster stretches of the day.
It felt really quick. And like in some ways it was like over a little too soon because we were just chatting. And there's something about the trail specifically. I know running opens itself up to it too, but we ended up talking a lot about just the experience and how running itself can really influence your life and your relationships. And it's just when you're on the trail like that and just getting to kind of like break down and simplify everything and like have real conversations, it's kind of nice. Like right now we're face to face, but because when you're running and you're kind of in a line, you don't necessarily have to have that like eye to eye connection, face to face connection that you know, sometimes hard in social scenarios, but we were just running, moving, talking, and like connecting in a way that I've found is just allows for a little bit deeper connection. And so like that, I will always remember that part of.
It was a great stretch and a really good experience. And you know, like you said, you know, running lifts a lot of pressures and maybe, you know, reservations, right? And I think that's a lot of the reason why you can build such deep relationships and get to know about people so much that you run with, because 1, you're out there for hours on end, and 2, you know, you're doing something you love, so you're going to be more open and it's easier to like flow with the conversation. So you and I had a really good stretch there. We got back to the ranch. I think it was a bit of a reveal as we came around the corner. We were hoping that we would see the gang all back reunited, including Ryan Hall. The crew was there minus Ryan Hall. So we were happy to see that the rest of our crew was back and in good shape, but then we were a little bit, you know, let down and confused about what had happened with Ryan. But
as we had some other, you know, there was a few other runners out on track and, catching them. Did you see this guy? This guy,
Right.
like jacked, George of the Jungle type dude running through there. And nobody had seen him, so we were waiting a little bit longer. At this point, like we had reunited with the rest of the crew. The part of the crew that was moving a little slower, they ended up taking off, which I thought was a really good move.
We sent them off again. Been sitting around for a while.
Exactly.
People are getting tight. It's starting to warm up. We know what's ahead of us.
Yep.
So, seemed to be a theme of the day. You and I sent everybody on their merry way.
Yeah.
And we, I think Spence and Flores this time decided to hang back, with us a little bit, and we waited for Ryan. In the meantime, knowing what we were going to get back into, the other thing I was looking forward to get back to the ranch besides that lemonade, were some banana bread flavored Pop-Tarts, and
that were in your pack.
They were in my pack,
yep.
And these were things I did not need for that 7.5 mile out and back, stretch. Mm-hmm. Gels were fine. But I knew when we got to the ranch, what would pair well with that lemonade would have been some Pop-Tarts. I even had a giant Slim Jim. And so...
a trail feast.
It was a trail feast, and I had been talking about it for a while. And I say all this to say that I stashed my shirt and my pack in a bush, and as I approached, I was relieved to see that it was there.
Yep.
So... all right, nobody had stolen my things.
Or so you thought.
Or so I thought. No human had messed with it. So as I approached, I saw a very chunky squirrel with what looked like a Pop-Tart wrapper, and I said, "Oh, that's weird. We're both having Pop-Tarts. Like I also have Pop-Tarts that I'm going to eat."
It's great. Good on you, buddy.
When I looked down into the bush, I saw a lot of debris. And I was like, something is off here. So come to find out, these squirrels do not mess around in the Grand Canyon.
Nope.
So if you're going there,
Phantom Ranch squirrels.
The Phantom Ranch squirrels are feral and ruthless. So to cut to the chase, they had chewed through the bottom of my pack, taken 2 Pop-Tarts, a meat stick, whatever else was in there was long gone. And to top it off, just to mess with me, they had chewed through one of my soft flasks, through the entire nozzle, and drank down an entire bottle of high-carb sports drink. So somewhere we've got some squirrels that were really jacked up. But I was down some really good snacks, and that was a bummer.
Some crucial gear.
Gear.
Thankfully, Flores had been in the canyon before, so he was extra prepared, because I think he kind of took on the job too, as like, Ryan might be our guide, but I'm gonna be prepared, and he certainly was, so he's able to provide some stuff. But that was like unfortunate to say the least, because like this is the time where, like you said, we're gonna be going up our hottest trail. Like all things come to a head when you're ascending to the canyon again. And so you wanted to be loaded up with water, electrolytes, you wanted to have food, because at the pace we were going in particular, and I'm sure we were some of the faster on the trail that day.
Right.
And it still took hours.
It's,
in the heat. But before eventually Ryan showed up.
Smile on his face, happy. I handed him a lemonade that I had, and I think that made him even happier. And so all was right with the world. Ryan was back. We were getting geared up. We had sent the other guys off, so we knew they were on their way, and we were going to give him a few minutes to kind of catch his breath and get some food in him and refill some bottles before we headed off.
For his food, he's been in the canyon a lot, and he's used to it, and he has his system down. But he goes in with a belt. He has a filter bottle, which he knows exactly where he's going to be filling up. And he has basically like a 2-pound bag of assorted candies.
Looks like he just came out of the candy kitchen on the boardwalk. It's amazing.
So, with gummies of all different sorts. And his magic was in the jelly beans.
Yes.
He swears by the jelly beans.
Jelly bellies. Not bamboozled. Not any weird flavors. Just good flavored jelly beans.
Yeah. Can you imagine doing a bamboozled jelly bean on the way out of the canyon?
No, I mean,
as if you didn't want to throw up on
you're
You're
ascending in the heat, 90 degrees, and you get a barf flavored one, or dog poop or whatever.
Oh, gosh.
We had enough to deal with smelling the mule poop on the ascent. We can talk about that later, but that was an added bonus.
For sure. And right before we went up as well, like we had this group of 4 guys. We had our other group going, and we decided, we're going to cool down one more time after we packed everything up. So we got to dip into the Colorado River, which was like, it kind of probably the second. It would be really hard to beat that Ribbon Falls refreshment.
Yeah, but it was a close second. It was a really fun. I mean, it was the perfect balance again of something that was functional. To cool off, but just another experience in the canyon.
Because it's literally a beach. Like if you're rafting down the river, it's a docking station, and so there was like people chilling out on this beach. We were able to dive in and just get really refreshed, and I ended up filling up my bottle there because I was like, I had 3 bottles in my Tantrums pack, which I'll show here. This is the Tantrums Crest 6, which we've loved for a lot of situations. It's actually made for hot weather, and so it's really light. Both Thomas and I were wearing them, and what I really love about it is it has a really truly light and breathable construction, has more space around the arms, but it still doesn't lack on storage really, so it's a 6-liter pack. And so I had all my food, everything like that. Also has kind of like a lumbar or a mid-back sleeve here that a lot of packs do. And so when we stopped at the water, I again filled up my Hydro Flask with filter bottle, like the number one piece of trail gear that I'll ever buy. It can go onto any Hydro Flask bottle, like easy choice to bring into the canyon. And then I was able to also had a short sleeve shirt. I think the one that
it is the same one from Path Projects.
Yeah, so I was wearing that most of the day, and I can't remember the name of it exactly. And I also had this Pyrenees hoodie that we just got all of our layers wet. So what I did personally, I got my shirt wet. We just dove in with everything. Got my shirt wet. I got this Pyrenees hoodie wet, and I put it in this lumbar space to kind of keep me cool, because as we ascended, like the heat we had a nice day, but it was still very hot on that other side.
Yeah, we got lucky for 75% of the day.
For sure.
Yeah, for sure.
And so like I thought it was crucial for us to, we took our last like kind of soul refreshing dip, physically refreshing dip, and we prepared for the way out with just like being wet and getting going. That was a tip from Ryan Hall himself, of just like get all your layers wet and we'll get going. So
as you mentioned, we were outfitted with a lot of new gear, and the Pyrenees hoodie is something that I had been interested in for a long time. So I was really happy to finally get my hands on one. You get
all the ads, and it's like sold out 7 times, and I'm like, why? Why was it sold out?
What's so special
Turns
about
out
this?
It's pretty good.
It is pretty damn good, and so I had worn that. I was planning to wear that. And then Flores brought another item for the crew here, which it looks very similar, from afar to the Pyrenees, right? But the wadi, I believe I'm saying that correct. The wadi is lighter, right? It's a little bit lighter. It definitely is going to have more sun protection than the Pyrenees. And so once we got our hands on these, I made the decision to say, okay, well, I'm going to wear the Pyrenees on our shakeout, get used to it, and I'm going to save this for the big day. And I'm really, really happy I did, because this probably, I know I really hyped up the half tights, and but I think when it came to that last 6.5 mile climb, this was the most crucial piece of gear on my body, that if I didn't have this, and the majority of our crew were in matching these 2.0, these matching wadis, and we were hoods up, You'd think,
with our white believe in the run.
With our white
CLA
believe in the
hat.
run, we were either, a really fast running group or a cult, right? And
a little bit of both,
actually. A little bit of both. And so I'll just echo what you said, Taylor, for the Pyrenees. But, I went into the river, I submerged in the river, I had this thing soaking wet. And, most things when you get them wet, they start to fit really weird. Yeah. Either they stick to you or they bunch up or they the material feels, strange. And so this did none of that. Like it was like a second skin, like a cool skin, right? Yeah. And then, that stayed, that was a big deal. It stayed there and cooled me down probably for maybe the next 1.5 miles, 2 miles. Yeah. But I guess. Which is huge. It's huge. 1.5 to 2 miles is anywhere between what? An hour, 45 minutes to an hour and a half. Yeah, well, we're talking canyon miles, right? Exactly. So time is probably a better indicator of how long it's kept me cooled off. And then the flip side to that is it's kind of like you want it to stay cool, but you also want it to be able to dry out quick, right? Because you don't always want something soaking wet on your body for hours. And because I've had the issue, especially when you get things wet, like tops and bottoms. Anywhere that there's a seam is when it's wet, kind of rubs you in a different way. Yeah. And I had none of that. I had no issues with seams rubbing or chafing or anything like that. So I was like super happy with it. Yeah. I mean, it's favorite piece of gear, right? And going when we got to the climb, which we'll talk about that section in a few minutes, but we were now fully exposed. High 90s. The sun has been baking this section for us all day. Each mile is somewhere between 500 to 1,000 feet of gain per mile in direct sun, right? And this is after we've already been out there for 8 hours, in the canyon. So it's a trudge, and having something like that to keep the sun just off of you. It really helped. So, and I would say it's a lifesaver. I actually kind of resist the sun hoodie often because it's like the freeness and feeling the breeze. But it literally saved us this time. Most anyone that I run with back home, once we get to 50 degrees or whatever, it's like sunny out. It's like shirts off, right? Off. Yep. And for the rest of the summer. Yeah. And so it takes, for me especially, to embrace wearing something long sleeve when it's 90-some degrees out there. That like it's a good piece. And everything that we had Pyrenees, not Pyrenees, Path Projects. You even had the socks on. I did. I had the socks on all day too. No, not a blister. And we can talk more about the combo of the shoe, but the Path Project socks that I wore them with obviously. With the shoe, and we got soaking wet multiple times. We were walking through rivers. We were in the waterfall. We were submerged in the Colorado River with the silt and the sand. And that was probably one of the things I was most surprised with pleasantly was that when we finally got home and we were able to peel all those socks and all those layers off of our body, I was bracing for couple blisters or anything, and I didn't have a single issue, which that's pretty crazy. That says a lot for sure. Yeah. And so I thought there was a crux section on the way up, and there's this section and it's facing, I think it's oriented mostly southwest, I believe, in the canyon, and it's right about to the halfway section of vertically. And there was just baking in the sun. It was blocked from the wind, and it was just so hot. Yeah. And at that point, once we got there, I thought we've moved fairly quickly up to that point. Yeah. And this is where even you and I started to spread out a little bit and get tired. And that I felt like that was the crux. Would you say? Yeah. So we knew that was going to be a tough haul, right? And even I remember Ryan saying to me, make sure you fill up, who needs water, and I said, and the squirrel had clearly taken one of mine, but I still had 3 full bottles, and I'm thinking in my head, I can go at home this time of year, I'm running without a bottle. I can go do 2 hours, right, without something, and so I'm like 6.5 miles. I'm like 3 bottles. This is like, what are the chances I'm going to run out? And so this is more of a PSA to future Grand Canyon, runners that like, if you think you have enough, maybe you just have one more. Because you're not going to be moving as fast as you think you are when you get to some of those later stages of the climb, and you are not going to be mad that you have an extra flask. Because when I ran out dry, it's probably the first time that's ever happened to me in any sort of race where I was just completely out, and you don't want that to happen.
And I was the same too. I was kind of rationing it, thinking about how much time would there be left, and I ended up having like a half bottle, but that's just because I was kind of hyper aware of it. And every runner that we chatted with at the rim when we got back, they talked about the need for more water, or like didn't quite understand. And I've even been told this, like, didn't quite understand how hot and kind of brutal that climb can be on the way out. It's
the perfect storm of variables, right, for that stretch on the South Kebab, ascent back out. And I think, like you said, like that 6.5 mile stretch of the climb, we were still moving pretty well for the first couple miles, even though it was hot and we were going up. And I think it was probably right around, and I'm not going to do justice to Ryan Hall's favorite segment on Strava. I think it's called the best time trial ever or something like that. So if you want to go out and check it out, but it's about a 1K straight up, segment. And
well, he did say there's one part that dips a little bit. And dips a little bit is just like flattens. Really,
I think that was just one pothole. I don't know about. I didn't feel any dip, but we did make a small group of us made a pact. And Ryan had took us out on the way down that morning on the rock overlooking this segment, and he said, "This is something special that like I get people to do on their first time with me, and so when we come back, we're gonna get to this spot, and you guys were gonna do this time trial segment." And so at that point, we were all hyped up for it. But when we got back, the group had really broken up. It was just a few of us. I think that maybe 3 or 4 of us that were with Ryan, and I call it out because, well, one, it was like a cool part of the moment that Ryan shared with us, but I think if I need to go pinpoint the downfall of where my soul left my body, I think people from the top of the rim saw my soul start to ascend out of my body as I was chasing Ryan on this 1K segment, and just realized that the legs didn't have them anymore, and it was probably going to be
23 miles in or whatever. I think it was probably like 24 miles in at that point.
I think you're right.
And that's too of like, so I was doing the same thing, and you just kind of have this appreciation. Like, he's been kind of bopping around all day, doing his thing, but that's where it's like he went for the segment too, and you just have such an appreciation for the distinction of like we're good experienced runners,
right?
But when you see that world class and experience that like right in front of your eyes, it's so cool.
It's
maybe a little humbling, but it's so cool.
It's so cool. I mean, it's that combination like we talked about earlier, where running is amazing and it's so unique that we could go share the trail with a world record holder, but at the same time, we're running stride for stride most of the day. But he is capable of so much more. There's another level or two to his game that when we got to that point where the fatigue is setting in, that's where you notice the difference the most, where he's got a smile on his face and he's flying up the trail. And the only reason that he's even within earshot of us is because he's being a nice guy and wants to hang with us.
Exactly.
He could be back to his car.
In what took us like 3-ish hours, we would have an extra few miles on that. He has done, on his best day, like around 72 minutes. Is that what he said? I know Walmsley's
yeah.
record's right around 65-ish
I was going to
minutes.
say, I think Walmsley has like a 65 something, but Ryan's not that far off. And
No.
that's a mind-boggling
I
number.
just can't comprehend that.
Yeah, once you're doing it, hearing the number and hearing 6.5 miles or whatever, it doesn't do it justice until you've got people that are, seasoned runners that are, I wouldn't even call sections a hike for me.
Yeah.
They were more of just like a trudge, to get one foot in front of the other and get up the mountain. Yeah.
And that's a good point too. Like trudge, whether you're trudging slow or quick, I think that's a key thing that we kind of all did on this ascent. Just keep moving if you can. I know those shady spots are really nice, or when it gets breezy, like it's hard not to just stop and reset. But on this section, we wanted to get out and to just keep moving, and that's very much an ultra runner thing, and it felt like an ultra for sure at that point.
It did,
just to get out.
and it's hard. I mean, you're looking around and it's almost apocalyptic at that time because we're now within 2 to 3 miles of the rim, and so we're now for the first time all day seeing hikers and day hikers and families, right, that are going to come down maybe for like, a 30-minute down, 30-minute back. And even with the conditions, we're coming, every corner we're coming around, chaos. There's a couple it's bodies, it's chaos. There's boyfriend, girlfriend couples sitting on the rocks just like questioning life. There's families like
there was one dude that I like, does he have life? Like it was honestly like.
So we did a lot of pulse checking, even though I was really in no shape to help anybody. I at least wanted to make it known that I was going to check on these people. We all were, and I bring it all up just to say, like, it really brought a reality to how raw and how crazy it can be in that environment. That these people that were coming down just for an hour were questioning the fact of, do I have enough water? Should we turn around to just leave?
And if you question, maybe you're already too far in, I guess.
Yeah.
So at that point, like, we kind of like fast forward to the end because we all struggled. We all had a hard time getting to the top, but we did it. And the big goal of the day obviously was to have this adventure and to get some people to their first ultra. Carl,
which was really cool. Shout out Carl.
Glad
we're not saying R.I.P. Carl. We're gonna pour one out for you.
Serious, because we thought we were gonna have to. We all get to the top. One group gets up. Next group gets up. Hey, we're celebrating. This is awesome. We're glad to sit on this rock in the shade and get some water. Huge accomplishment, even for, again, runners who, like, we've done a lot of different styles of running, achieved a lot of great things, but that felt like a major accomplishment, like one for the books. Like, on so many levels. And so, like, everybody comes up and we're like, where's Carl? I thought he was in front of you. Oh, where's Carl? Oh, we left him about a mile from the river.
We thought you'd find him.
Oh, yeah, okay, we'll wait for the next group to see if they've seen Carl. Like, surely someone has seen them. No. Everybody from our group, except Carl, comes up. Nobody has seen Carl.
And we should say that between where we were at the top, at the parking lot, at the top of the trail, and where they had left him, you really can't deviate.
No.
So I understand why Thomas and that group felt like it was okay to let him hang back, because we were sweeping behind and there was and so we would run into, because you can't really go anywhere.
You can't.
Now, obviously there was somewhere he could go. That's why we missed him. But we were all like really confused because we were like, why we would have seen him. Like, we're all dressed in these white hoods.
We had like so many people asking us questions because we were all dressed the same basically. Surely somebody would have seen him, noticed him. Oh, there's one more guy from that cult. But nobody. Nowhere. So, like, in my mind, I'm like, gosh, are we going to have to do a memorial for Carl? No, it wouldn't be.
We're going to have to change the name of the shoe.
Exactly.
Right. In his memory.
Believe in
the Carl.
Yep. But thankfully we didn't. It took some time, but eventually, like, right around, like, apparently the last 2 miles of the canyon, around that, you can get some service.
Yeah.
And thankfully, like, initially when I tried calling him, okay, it went through. So he obviously has service. He's close enough to the top.
Right. We know that he's close enough.
Building some hope, but still didn't know. And eventually we got a ping on his Find My, which I'm pretty sure was his suggestion earlier that night when we were sitting around the fire.
So maybe a little foreshadowing that Carl knew about his own fate.
Yes.
So.
Yeah, and eventually he came up in not the greatest of conditions.
Seen him better.
Yes.
But we were all
Wasn't
really
exactly
happy to see him, and I think he was really happy to find a bench in the shade and sit down.
And he successfully achieved his first.
Yeah, and I mean we're
in the freaking Grand Canyon.
Yeah, we're joking about this right now, and none of these are digs against him because that was an insane feat.
Yeah.
It was put in perspective all day. You know, like we talked about. Like I took it very nonchalant going in because I was looking at it purely from a distance, and like, you know, and I really quickly learned to respect what we were doing. And then just people we'd run into right the whole day, whether in the canyon, at the restaurant after, like people saw us out there all day, and you know we are so used to and so like immersed in running and ultras and these like all our friends, all the people we're around, like, you know, we kind of lose a bit of grounding in how hard some of these things are, and so people that we saw out there that were doing a 5-mile hike or a 6-mile hike or a 3-mile hike or, you know, going out for 3 hours, and they knew how hard and crazy that was when they were like, we keep seeing these guys. Like we saw them like 5 hours ago over there, and now they're over here. They're like, "What are they doing? Like that's insane!" Like so it was a little bit of a pat on the back to be like, you know what, that was really hard. And for someone like Carl who had never done a 50K in his life to do it in those conditions in the Grand Canyon was like epic. It was I was so happy to see him emerge and like be able to like have that victory. Yeah, and honestly, too, like obviously we're all down here celebrating the BITR H1, Thomas's baby, and I kind of found a little pleasure in him struggling, actually, because I know this was something that's kind of been haunting him for a long, 18 years of like, that's my one and only DNF. Yeah. And we had this route that we were going to do and going to go for, and I know in his mind he wishes that it was a little easier, or like, of these years of experience being fit, like this is going to be easier than I thought. Right. It would have came to him easier. Yeah. However, he said this is one of the hardest things, maybe the hardest thing he's ever done. Yeah. And actually for him to kind of close this chapter and celebrate like this shoe that's coming to life, I personally think that piece is pretty cool. Like the challenge is still there, as hard as he remembered it. And yet he achieved it. Yeah. Like that was a really special moment for me to like kind of reflect on that. Yeah. It's a life lesson, whether it's running or, things you teach your kids and stuff. It's like the stuff that's worth working for and worth celebrating, it's never easy. Yeah. And so the harder it is, when you succeed and when you achieve it, that gives you that sense of pride and that accomplishment that like really is what drives us and what makes us feel good, and if it would have been easier, it might not have been as special. Yeah. Right. Yeah. I know for me, right, that's how it felt. I think a lot of what brought me to have those special bonds with people out there and like have that feeling of accomplishment that we sort of rode that high the rest of the night. It was because I knew how far I had pushed myself to make it happen. Yeah. And like we're just, 24 hours really removed of this experience. Yeah. And I know it's going to take a while for us to really let it set in because it was more than just a long run in a new, beautiful place. And like, I think that a lot of that is reflected in this shoe. And I kind of saved this part for the end of like, we're going to do what we do best and kind of dissect this a little bit of like, be real about the performance of it. We won't put out like a full written review or video review necessarily of this shoe, but it's here. We just experienced this for a
it was like 10 hours,
Yeah,
right, in the canyon.
Yeah.
And what are some of your initial thoughts after? Because I use mine a fresh pair.
Same here.
Right
I had
out
probably
of the box.
6 miles on mine, maybe.
Yeah, just
all
because
on the
of
roads.
the day before.
Just yep.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, honestly, a couple things stood out to me right away. Well, we put these to the test immediately because the descent,
Yeah.
like we talked about, was more challenging than we thought because of the terrain. On top of that, too, you've got a really dry terrain, so you've got a combination
Dusty.
of dust settling on top of the rocks.
Yep.
That's going to create this really like thin but slippery layer.
Yep.
And so the first feature all day is the gator.
Yep.
I know gators are a polarizing topic for people. Aesthetically aside, what people think about them, the function of it was undeniable on terrain like that.
Yep.
I don't think we would have been able to run that long with how dry and dusty it was, as well as be able to get it wet and go into the water without that feature. I
had zero debris get in my shoe.
Not a problem.
Which says a lot.
Yeah, and this is something I actually didn't even notice before, but in talking, so when we had stopped at one of these points, Lynn from Mount the Coast, who had helped design this with Thomas, had shown me that this isn't just adding a gator on the regular model. Mm-hmm. That this whole upper here is sort of just one integrated piece with this material, but through the laces here, it's padded.
Yep.
And so there was the level of like lock in here. It literally felt like I was just wearing like a sock, a compression sock, on the entire upper.
And in the standard H1, that was something. The overall fit is something that I, like all of our reviewers, personally knocked a little bit because there is that extra room. Yeah. It wasn't always necessary to have the dual zone, but in this case, with the integrated sock and how it is, you feel a lot more secure,
you do.
A lot more fitted. And I was actually able to more comfortably cinch up, especially this top lacing system. It's called the Tuned Fit.
Tuned Fit.
There we go. And so, like, I would just appreciate this sock integration so much, especially after our experience in the canyon. Like, it actually makes the shoe lighter as well.
Yeah.
And so lighter, more secure, and that added like debris protection. Like,
it's
for this application in the Grand Canyon, fantastic.
I was gonna say this is a use case for the shoe.
Yep.
What I would say is like you're also, but it's not gonna hurt you.
No.
In a more in a different terrain, right?
Yep.
So there's really not a downside.
I mean, we were just jogging on some tar paths and a little bit of gravel the day before. Did you even notice it?
No.
Like, I often wear crew length socks anyway.
Yeah, I always wear crew socks.
I don't notice it in terms of sensation, but I do notice it for sure in terms of fit.
Yeah, definitely.
And so,
and to your point, like I didn't have to crank down on this at all.
I just left the forefoot open it.
I didn't touch this piece.
Ooh, yeah, another one.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
All right. Right on time.
Crack it. Thank you, Thomas. Coming in with some beers.
To the rescue. And so, the two things that stood out the most, right? That was one. I mean, that was probably the overwhelming piece to this shoe that got me through the day.
Yeah.
The other one is the fact that, the midsole on this is, for me, probably the perfect combination of comfort, right? But also feeling light and feeling dynamic and like having some energy return. What really stood out was that this is, with that kind of descent, especially, we talked about what kind of stress that could be like on the soleus, because you're just kind of pounding down.
Really pounding.
I mean, your quads are, when we finally hit, we were all joking, when we hit flat ground after those 6.5 miles, the first few steps on flat ground, I was like a baby giraffe trying to learn how to run for the first time, because the quads had been just pounded. But I think if you would have had a shoe that was plated, if you had a shoe that maybe would have had a little bit less stack or a little more firm foam, that pounding probably would have felt a lot more brutal through that section. And then you're not going to recover. So you're going to carry that with you. So for me, the balance of the foam, the upper, those were really like the big pros of the shoe. And it was really on display during the descent, but that just kind of stayed with it through the rest of the day.
And we've commented on this circle cell foam. It's just like fantastic. Feels energetic, smooth on the road.
Yeah.
Feels like stable enough on the trails to like actually access more trails. It is a little bit flexible. And I was wondering, because this is more of a moderate stack height. I think it's 34 in the heel to 28, 6 millimeter drop. I might need to check that, but it's a moderate stack. And I was timing it. I was timing to see, our analytic brains can't really shut off when we're reviewing things. I was timing to see like, when did I notice my feet feeling fatigued? And it was like 6 hours. And I'm someone who, like, my longest trail run in the last 6 months is like 2.5 hours.
Yeah.
And so it was like 6 hours until my feet noticeably felt fatigued. Obviously, we had more hours on that. So that just kind of brings it into the window of like, this would be a good shoe for, a variety of distances depending on the terrain. And that's with a lot of pounding terrain in there. So I thought the midsole, maybe I would add a little more stack if I was going to do that duration again.
Yeah.
However, it's so terrain dependent. But I was really impressed that at only 34 millimeters of stack, you still had that amount of protection. My feet feel great today.
Yeah, my feet were fine. Like, I think my legs started to go before my feet felt beat up.
For sure.
So, just like we talked about with the tights, the best compliment you can give is when you're not thinking about it. You're not thinking about that body part. And, I was focused on other things, and to the point where I almost kind of didn't even think about the shoe.
Yeah.
So in a good way, you had this analytical mind and you had that clock going, so you could get some good data to bring back. I didn't have that, but I think I would kind of just zoned out. And I think that's also a really good testament, because it's just, if you're not thinking about it, then it's not bothering you.
Exactly.
And you're not sitting there, because you know how bad it is if you've got some sort of, something that's bothering you somewhere. There's something that's rubbing, something that's, feels off. Then that's immediately you stop enjoying the run. Yeah. And you think about that. Yeah. And you think about it until it goes away. And that's not a place you want to be.
Which is usually the end of the run.
Right.
Which could be how long?
Yeah.
Exactly. The only issue before we get to the outsole, the only real and tiny issue is that there was a little bit of pinch for me and a little bit of irritation just right at the top where this kind of the sock and the more traditional collar meet. And it was just minuscule, and it was only on the uphills. And so that's just something to note for those who might have some of those issues with heel collars often. Yeah. But over 10 hours that we were out there, if that's the only thing I was feeling like, that actually impressed me. I was kind of bracing for a little bit more than that actually. Yeah. And so what about the outsole?
Yeah, so this is where we can be, constructive with our criticism. Sure. But also be fair to what the shoe's intent is.
Absolutely.
And that's, I want to be careful with that, and be honest in that sense that, so I think, the H1, the beauty in the H1 is that when you get a shoe that's a hybrid, right? All the hybrid shoes, it's been the craze, right? The hybrid shoes that you and I reviewed the last couple of years.
Hybrid, gravel,
road to trail, whatever moniker you want to give it. When it's a success, it's a shoe that actually can do all those things, but we're not putting the expectation on it that a road to trail or a gravel or hybrid shoe is going to really stand up to a really technical trail, right?
Yep.
Sometimes, so if you ask it to do more than it's intended and it fails, then that's not really a knock on the shoe.
Sure.
So I say all that to be sort of candid here and say we had some comments on the way down, right? And clearly, what do we have here?
I think millimeter, 2 millimeter lugs.
Yeah, 2 millimeter. So for a gravel shoe or a hybrid, you're probably not going to have anything more than 3 millimeters.
Yeah.
And so
and an average trail lug is about 4.
Yeah, right.
And
so it seems like not a huge difference, but it's definitely something you notice
yeah.
out on the trail with the ground feel. And for us, I mean, the only part for me where that became problematic was the descending.
In the steeper section.
The steeper descents.
The steeper section of descents
right.
where it was a little loose.
Yeah, and that was the perfect dynamic of, we said you got that dust that settles on the rocks.
Yep.
It's a really thin, thick layer, and you're not going to get like that tackiness that you need to kind of stick there and plant and feel secure. And so the first slip or two, I know we were kind of talking back and forth, you, me, Ryan, I think Floris, we were all kind of commenting and saying, yeah, like just be careful.
Yep.
Watch your footing, and really, I don't know, even like a bigger lug would have helped us there.
Yeah.
I think just maybe a tackier material could have helped.
Yep.
Now, once we got down the hill and finished the steep descent, I wouldn't have wanted something with anything that was more aggressive.
Like, honestly,
like
this was perfect for me. There was only one time that I thought about it, and it was the one time that I actually slipped, and that was on a steep,
Yeah, and that was early on in the steep.
Yeah.
Right. The rest of the day, I would have preferred, it was more than happy to have something that was less aggressive and more versatile because I got the comfort with it.
Yeah. And it ended up being more versatile than I was thinking it was going to be.
Yeah.
And we've tested this shoe already. And so that's like, if you think of like that whisker and biscuit scale of like a road to trail or hybrid shoes should be able to do fairly well on the road, fairly well on some light trail. But there's also those kind of outlier numbers of like where I would say on the versatility scale, like this particular version, I would say that the H1 kind of has a limiter, but then this one's even more versatile because of that fit, and you just feel more secure. And it's like a truly versatile shoe.
Yeah.
And if it handles in the canyon fine on a dry, hard packed day, it's going to handle a lot of different things really well. So I feel like that's a really fair assessment of the shoe. The other thing I was going to say, durability.
Mm-hmm.
Ryan Hall made the comment as soon as he put his pair on, because he tried his out for the first time.
Yep.
He's like, I'm going to break right through this.
Yep.
And then we're like, well, actually, no, this is a Kevlar mesh. Aramid upper?
Don't hold me to it, but people understand Kevlar.
Exactly.
And,
that's all we need
to say, I think. Yeah.
The last thing is breathability.
Yeah.
We got these soaking wet so many times.
Yeah.
And they dried out without destroying our feet before they dried out. And
that's honestly something I didn't even, there's so much else to think about that I stopped after the first time we got wet in the river. That was the only time where you get out anytime you have a water crossing. Yeah. Those first few steps, the squishiness, and you're going, oh man, I don't like, this is gonna be bad. I don't like this feeling, and so that was the only time all day where I was like, okay, when is this gonna? How long is it gonna take to dry out?
Yep.
Once I forgot about that, the next thing I almost sort of I was distracted by the waterfall experience, and the next thing I knew, I was like, oh, wait a minute. My shoes are dry.
Yeah.
Right? And so from that point on, I mean, we literally dove into the Colorado River with our shoes on.
Yeah.
And didn't even think about it. No, I was challenged to swim across the river. And I would have not done that with shoes on.
No, I would have took these off.
Yeah.
But also, on a traditional trail shoe like this, we a lot of times have an overlay going around the rim here for more durability. But because it didn't have this, and they had these Kevlar, this woven Kevlar material up top, when you would step down when it's wet, it actually would force the water out. So it actually is breathable enough to push the water out, and it's not getting caught in any sort of bowl here. Right. So that was really impressive to me in a part that I didn't expect either. So I mean, we don't need to give an overall score from it, but smiley face, ecstatic face, what would you,
I mean,
how do you think it's performing?
For me, without a number score, this is definitely, like thumbs up here.
Oh,
Like, right,
yeah.
I think for me, there have only been 2 like hybrid gravel, whatever you want to call
Yep.
it, shoes where I would give it, almost like a total positive score.
Yep.
And it's this, and it's the Salomon Aero
Ooh, yes.
Gravel, right?
Yep.
3, 4, both versions. Like, and if I'm comparing this to that shoe, I think you know how much I love that shoe.
I think we got a between 2 shoes.
Yeah.
Action
So
going on
it's
too.
that's a lofty comparison,
Yeah.
and so to me, this is a really, really solid shoe.
Yeah. I mean, I was glad to be able to put the miles in and to like truly test this and to say like without a doubt this is a shoe that can handle a lot and obviously holds special meaning to us here at Believe in the Run. But before we go, I want to get just kind of like one sentence, one word to just kind of sum up your experience in the Grand Canyon here with Mount to Coast Path Projects.
Oh man,
celebrating the launch of the BITR H1.
It's gonna be hard.
Putting you on the spot.
One word's hard, but I'll be concise. I'll try just on the spot, right?
Yeah.
I think grateful. Grateful is a good word. Grateful is. I felt humbled to experience the Grand Canyon, and I felt blessed to do it with people that really were authentic and really special, and I bonded with. And when you have those kinds of experiences with both running and with people, like it's something that it's one of those memories you're going to look back on, and it's going to transcend just I ran 30 miles in the Grand Canyon. Right.
Nice work of transcend in there.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, Matt, thanks for joining today. I mean, like what an honor it was for all of us to experience this, but selfishly glad we got to do it together.
Yeah, dude. Me too.
And, dude.
Finally, 7 years in the making.
Exactly. Till next time.
Yes.
Got my laces tied. My trusty podcast by my side. If you wanna tuck run, it's the place to be. Yeah, it's the drop. DR